Welcome to Spatial Signals. It's a podcast about remote sensing and geospatial science, but more importantly, the people behind it. I'm your co-host, Dr. Brad Shillito, and with me, as always, your other co-host, coming to you from his pirate radio station at the side of the road at Forrest Gump Point, Mr. Chris McGinty. Chris, how's Utah treating you today?
Utah's great, Brad. How's Ohio today?
Ohio is awesome as always. It never gets better here in Ohio.
As long as it doesn't get worse, I assume we're okay.
Hey, at least we're not talking about the weather here. So
hey, we are not doing another weather segment. We're done with that. At least till
hottest
the
segment in
next
podcasting right there.
Right?
Well, for those of you just joining us, this podcast is sponsored by AmericaView, the National Geospatial and Remote Sensing Network that's dedicated to empowering Earth observation. Now, AmericaView's been around since 2003, but it's grown from a program within just the state of Ohio to a network of programs across the United States that are working with remote sensing, with GIS, with geospatial technologies, in outreach, research, and education. But before we get into the meat of our show with our special guest, I'm going to kick things over to Chris for the top of the news.
Thanks, Brad. Well, just a couple things that I wanted to mention today in the world of remote sensing. I wanted to point out a couple things on the USGS, United States Geological Survey website, specifically to do with Landsat. And this really kind of gets back to the point, we talk about Landsat a lot. We talk about all sorts of sensors. We're going to have some discussions about drones today. I'm pretty excited about. But really, talking about how Landsat data is processed. And Brad, we've talked about Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the Aros Data Center. We've talked in our origin story, Mary O'Neill and Kim Sikowski talked about, the importance of the data center in Sioux Falls. But kind of just getting back to, how they're always how would I say it? They're always making their processes better to ensure that this data is the highest quality they can. And if you go to their website, there's always new news about Landsat and the data that's coming out. But most recently, and I really wanted to highlight this, is that they're even going back to the early days of MSS data. So early Landsat data from the multispectral sensor that was flown on Landsats 1, 2, 3, and I believe part of 4. No, 4 was TM. Anyway. That aside, they actually discovered that there was about 44,000 Landsat 2 and 3 MSS products that were processed incorrectly. And, I want to bring that to the forefront. Yeah. Just 1 second before you jump in, because I know you're going to have a good comment on this. But the fact that they're going back and looking at this data, this old historic data that still has so much importance and making sure it's correct, I think is a huge testament to the folks at Aros and the work they do on the calibration validation team. So now I won't step on you, but go ahead.
No. I mean, we kid around here, but yeah, being able to go back to that old MSS data, the original OG Landsat data that's really being used for a lot of historical things with time series change and change over time, and making sure that that's correct. That's really a testament to what they're being able to do here at Aros and USGS.
It is. It's key. So I wanted to point that out, and then give, we'll put some notes on Substack, and the show notes, and links to some of these sites where you can find out more about Landsat on a regular basis. And they have some great social media accounts that you can also follow and get all of this updated information. So just wanted to point that out, and I'll hand it back to you for the rest of the show.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Chris. Well, I want to introduce our special guest here today, who's going to be Dr. Donna Delparte, who is a professor in the Department of Geosciences at Idaho State University, and is also right now going to be stepping into the role of chair of AmericaView. Now, Donna has her bachelor's degree from the University of Regina and her master's and her PhD from the University of Calgary. But she's got an extensive background in applications of GIS and remote sensing into the fields of precision agricultural, natural hazards, resource management, conservation, environmental-based research. And she teaches graduate courses at Idaho State University in UAS and geovisualization and geostatistics as part of the Masters of GIS program there at the university. But we'll be talking about all that, so thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show, Donna.
Well, thank you, Chris and Brad, for inviting me today. I'm really excited.
Oh, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to be here. But the first thing that we ask all of our guests is, what is your origin story? When you had a whole pile of things that you could have gone into, any field possible, why is it that you picked remote sensing and GIS? How did you get into that?
I got started in remote sensing and GIS through the avenue that a lot of people do is starting my undergrad and starting in geography. And in geography, they had some great equipment, some brand new computers that had fresh installations of something called Arc Info. So
Arc
back in the
Info.
old, yes,
What?
way
What?
back.
What in the world is Arc Info? Our audiences today are going to look for that in a museum somewhere.
Yeah, those computers are probably in a museum as well. They were old Unix based systems with all command line Arc info commands. So basically, a lot of the same tools that we use today for all those Esri ArcGIS Pro users out there, except that we type them in with a command line. And that's how we did our GIS back in the day. And that got me hooked on kind of using computer technology for conservation, resource management, all kinds of really cool things that we can do with these powerful tools.
Right. So then, after you took a couple GIS courses and some remote sensing, now this would all been at University of Regina, or was that at Calgary? Did you start with your bachelor's in doing stuff in GIS, or did you not do that till grad school?
Yeah, actually at the University of Regina. And at one time, the town motto for Regina was the town that rhymes with fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you figure out that one.
Regina equals fun. Yes, that's the.
And yeah, anyway, yeah, that's where I started off in my GIS and remote sensing career. I got a really solid foundation from that undergraduate degree and jumped off into the world of environmental consulting and worked for a few years in environmental consulting, looking at all kinds of interesting projects using GIS. One was a dam project where they were looking at mitigating lands that would be flooded. Where could they mitigate habitat for those lands that would be lost? That was a really big project. And I really enjoyed it, and then kind of got interested in pursuing more education. And that's when I went over to the University of Calgary and did an advanced degree there in geography again. Typically in Canada, most of the sort of GIS remote sensing. Sorry, I'll stop maybe for a second. Sorry.
Sure, no
Most
problem.
of the processing and cool tools and toys for GIS remote sensing were available in geography departments. So I was at the University of Calgary Department of Geography and taking advantage of learning even more new cool techniques and approaches for using remote sensing and GIS to solve kind of these conservation resource management type of problems.
Mm-hmm. And then, what took you from Canada to Idaho, of all places?
Well, it's actually a bit of a long, circuitous route.
Okay, it wasn't just a direct flight from
It wasn't
Calgary to
just
Idaho. There.
it wasn't just a direct flight. In fact, after I finished my master's degree, I worked for a year at Esri in
Oh
Redlands,
wow.
California, and went down to uh, learn all the kind of insider knowledge at headquarters there in Redlands, and then actually came back after about a year there to British Columbia, and I worked at a community college in British Columbia, Selkirk College, for a few years, teaching students how to use these tools in an environmental planning program.
And then you just randomly decided to go to Pocatello, Idaho.
Well, there's
No offense to Pocatello. I'm only a little ways from you.
well, there's another step in between there. So, in my stint at Selkirk College, I was applying for grants to build up a kind of a center of excellence. And that center of excellence at Selkirk College still exists today, which is really exciting. And I decided, well, if I'm going to, launch this center of excellence, I should get a PhD. So after kind of starting up the center, I completed my PhD at University of Calgary again, this time actually specializing in using GIS remote sensing for hazard analysis. And coming from British Columbia, of course, I loved backcountry skiing. And I was always looking at those slopes going, I wonder if that's a safe slope to ski today. So using GIS and remote sensing, developed these high resolution maps for hazard mapping for backcountry skiing enthusiasts. And that's what my PhD focused on, things like determining snow avalanche runout and slope susceptibility for avalanches.
Wow, very neat.
Yeah, and then of course, working with snow avalanches, job opportunity came open at the University of Hawaii. Makes good sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, perfectly. Snow, mountains, avalanches, Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's the next logical step.
So then I did a little journey and worked at University of Hawaii in Hilo, and was there for about 3 years studying all kinds of really great local kind of issues and challenges for Hawaiian land management, everything from looking at agriculture across the big island of Hawaii to looking at prehistory land use on the island of Molokai. And there I also connected with some coral researchers, and we started to take GIS and remote sensing underwater. And we were looking at monitoring coral habitat, and actually did quite a bit of work using kind of structure from motion. So using images that were taken underwater by a diver, stitching them together and creating these underwater maps of coral habitat. And the idea was to look at that coral habitat, more complex, more rugged, the more hiding places for fish. We could also look at damage after storms. And also we could look at coral health issues, which of course is a big topic of mind right now in the world with some large coral bleaching events. So then, after 3 years in Hawaii, I missed snow, mountains, rivers, and that's how I ended up in Pocatello. Pocatello is in the southeastern corner of Idaho and is close to so many wonderful things to do outside.
Mm-hmm. You just decided, I'm living here in paradise, but what I really miss, it's winter and snow and the cold.
Yes. And certainly I love the Big Island. That's where I lived in Hilo, and such a great island and so many things to do there. But it was time to come back to the main island, the mainland, I should say, and start building a career and lots of projects back here in Idaho.
Oh, very, very cool. That is one circuitous route that you did take to end up there in Idaho, certainly. But from your work there in Idaho, what brought you into America View? Because like we said at the top of the show, you're about to be stepping into the chair of America View. What brought you even to America View in the first place?
Well, as I got settled in here at Idaho State University in the Department of Geosciences, one of my colleagues came to me and said, it's your turn to step into the role of representing Idaho in this program called Idaho View and America View. And that's how I got launched into being part of this amazing network of states across the nation that are doing all these cool things in GIS and remote sensing. So I was super excited to represent and become the principal investigator for Idaho View and take that role on and meet all the incredible people in our network from across everywhere in the U.S.
So I'm curious, you did step into the Idaho View role, and like to point out that the Idaho was unique because it used to be kind of a rotating PI ship, if you will. Somebody would, from different universities would take it on, and that worked okay. It worked all right, but it's been really great to have you, have things focused at your university and within your program. And I wanted to kind of lead that into some of the things that you're doing now, Donna. What are you, what are some of the projects you're working on? America View based or not, I think you have an incredible program, but love to hear some of what you're working on now and some of your drone programs, especially.
Sure. So, of course, coming to Idaho, as I got started here, one of the first projects that I really took a deep dive into was looking at potatoes for Idaho. And of course, being one of the main crops here, and what Idaho is famous for is the amazing potatoes that we grow here. And working with students that were from the farm, and they were interested in studying the problems that farmers faced in growing potato crops. So looking at using these advanced remote sensing tools, I purchased a drone and was able to find some funds for a expensive hyperspectral sensor for the drone. And with this sensor, it really allows us to peer in this high resolution, not only resolution, but high spectral resolution. So high spectral and spatial resolution sensor, where we could look at leaf scale detection of potato plants that were infected with a virus that is prevalent all across the globe, and that's potato virus Y. So many hours slugging around in potato fields, marking and identifying by hand potato plants are infected with the virus, getting those leaf tissue samples tested and checked, and then using that to train a model that we were using hyperspectral data for, and be able to kind of use that to detect these isolated plants in the field that could be detected early and removed before the disease or virus is spread through the crop. So that's really been an exciting project, and really a way to kind of contribute to Idaho's economy, and contribute to the students who really are coming from this background in agriculture. So precision agriculture to detect viruses has been really was my first sort of foray into projects here in Idaho.
That's really cool. And Brad also mentioned that you've done some work in natural hazards and some other areas. Can you talk a little bit about some of that work?
Sure. Another recent thing in the news has been between Idaho and Wyoming. There was a recent landslide on Teton Pass, which closed the road for about 21 days. And I think it was partially open after 21 days, which was an amazing feat considering the amount of damage that was done. And what we were doing was working with Idaho Transportation Department to look at using remote sensing, and again with drones, to scout, monitor, spot susceptible slopes. So we've been using LiDAR, and LiDAR being able to really give us kind of a complete view of the land, as it's able to penetrate through dense forest canopy and give us back kind of that surface information underneath the trees. And from there, we can start monitoring and checking for ground movement, scarps, areas of change, and really looking for those slopes that are susceptible. So tying back into some of the work that I did with avalanches, there are some kind of parallels with that mass movement type of events. So that has been really exciting traveling all over eastern Idaho, flying LiDAR, and detecting slopes that are susceptible for landslide, and actually being able to detect some change. So even within 1 year, we've been able to see land movement and be able to point those areas out to Idaho Transportation Department and work with them on how can we look at using unmanned aircraft systems or drones to monitor and keep everyone for public safety and for being able to preemptively address any issues before they happen.
That's really cool. I think that that slide that happened between Jackson and Driggs was it happened quick, and I don't know how much warning that they had that it was going to occur, but your work on this is just fascinating, and I think that there's a lot of potential, and I love that it gets back to your avalanche research that you did early on. And what backcountry skier doesn't think that knows GIS doesn't think about how can I map avalanche paths? And I certainly remember doing some of that with the original 30-meter DEMs that we had back in the day. We had to download all that data and process, and things have certainly changed to the point where you're collecting leaf level data, which is just fascinating. And now you're doing work to map even slight movements of landslides. So that's just incredible. I feel like I'm a little nervous because I have two of my bosses on this podcast today. So Don, I'm super excited about you becoming a board chair. I think it's going to be fantastic for the organization. But that leads me to the question that I have, and kind of maybe stepping away from some of talking about your research, which is probably the most interesting thing. But interested in your what's your assessment of America View and Idaho View and the impact of the organization, not just in Idaho but across the country. What's been your experience?
Yes, the America View network has been an incredible network to collaborate among states, and recently Ohio View with Anita Semick, and Louisiana View with Rodney Antis and myself, we came up with a plan to work together, and Anita submitted a grant proposal, and we were able to get funding to bring students from each of our states to visit Louisiana, Ohio, and Idaho. And for this particular project, we all came down to each state and then learned about all the amazing remote sensing and GIS projects at each state. When people came to Idaho, nearby here, we have a national monument called Craters of the Moon. And we had guest speakers from USGS and NASA talk about how we can use craters of the moon as a proxy for the moon, and how we can use remote sensing to basically apply the same mapping techniques for the moon and potential lunar landings.
That's really cool, and I think you kind of hit on it there, talking about just the collaboration, the network across the the collegiality across the country is fantastic, and it doesn't just benefit the folks directly involved with the state view, the PI or the state coordinator, but all the students that get involved as well. It's just a fantastic opportunity. That and kind of starting to wind things up here. What's next on the horizon for you? What are you working on now, and what projects are you going to be focusing on in the next little bit?
Well, there's maybe two projects that are worth mentioning, and briefly, we've been working with the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, looking at an area in Idaho where we have salmon runs, and there's real interest in using GIS, and in particular, we're using drones equipped with thermal sensors to look at stream temperatures across the spawning grounds, and figuring out where are salmon building these nests where they spawn and lay the eggs, and those eggs thrive there in these amazing conditions in Idaho. But we want to see where are those spots, where might they be vulnerable, and how can we map those locations. So using these advanced remote sensing techniques, we can kind of pick out where the fish are deciding to build these red nests and really look at long-term conservation options for salmon in Idaho. The other project that we're looking at is a golden eagle project in the along the Snake River Plain, and particularly nesting locations along the Snake River. And we're working with biologists with Boise State University, so kind of part of that Idaho View network, coming together, collaborating, and looking at mapping golden eagle nests. And again, looking for criteria of where the birds are nesting, monitoring those nest locations, and working with the biologists to make sure there's no nest disturbance or any other impact, and being able to look at long-term conservation needs for the golden eagles, and using technology where we can do these remote detections without interfering with bird activity, and be able to provide these counts. So in the past, they would actually use manned helicopter flights to look at bird surveys. And by using drones, it's much safer, not only for the humans that are in the helicopter, but also for the birds as well, by using this sort of low impact survey to monitor the birds and see what they're doing and monitoring their success.
I have to ask, do the birds ever chase your drones?
We have not had any interaction with any of our birds. The drone is really quiet. It's a vertical takeoff and landing drone. It's kind of a little speck in the sky, and the birds have not paid any attention to it at all.
That's great.
Well, unfortunately, I see by the clock on the wall, we are just about out of time. But I want to say, Donna, thank you so much for joining us. We would love to have you back on again, that we can do a much deeper dive into a lot of these issues with drones, and particularly some of the work that you're going to be doing with these.
I would love to, and share all the things that we've learned using all different kinds of sensors and drone platforms. Sounds like a great discussion.
Well, that would be great. But before we go, where can everyone find you online?
Probably the best way to find me online is actually just to type into Google Delparte Labs, and that will bring up work related to my lab. Or if you're interested in Idaho View, type again that into Google, and you'll get to our websites.
We'll put links to all those in the show notes for you. But again, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming here onto the show today.
Well, thank you.
And Chris, where can everybody find us online?
Well, Brad, everybody can link into our social accounts. They're at America View on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. We also have our Substack. You can go over to Substack and check out America View's Substack. Like you said, we'll have all of our show notes and links to our podcasts there every time they drop. So, but always very important to mention the resources that are on the America View website. So americaview.org. You head over there. There's all sorts of free remote sensing and geospatial resources for educators, for students, and for researchers. So take a look at the website if you have a chance.
And as always, we'd like to thank our editor, Matthew Wozniak, for making us sound good, and our theme music from Matthew Maxwell. But we'll be back soon with another episode. So until then, I'm Brad Shellito.
I'm Chris McGinty.
And you keep watching the skies for those spatial signals out there.